Today we are fixing one of the biggest issues that 350Z track cars suffer from, which is fuel starvation. And we're gonna do it by cutting the gas tank in half. Well, there's no going back now. That's right, I'm pulling the gas tank out of this thing, cutting it in half, and running only half of a gas tank, which means we'll have right around 10 gallons, which is more than enough for a dedicated track car. And more importantly, we are going to eliminate fuel slosh. One of the big problems these cars have, especially as a drift car, is that as they're going from side to side, the fuel is sloshing from one side of the tank to the other. Now, if you're unfamiliar with the way these work, it's a saddle tank. There's a left side and a right side, and it goes up and over the trans tunnel. So there's this like thin little saddle, if you can picture like what a horse saddle looks like, that goes up and over, and fuel has to go over that. There's a little line that goes from one to another. And it works, but it doesn't work if you're demanding a lot out of the car. Generally, if I was drifting on flat ground and I kept over a half a tank, I never had any problems. When we started drifting on bigger, faster tracks, especially with banked turns, coming in off the flat up onto a bank, you'd get fuel starvation because all the gas is going to one side, and then you get fuel cut, your engine kind of stalls out for just a quick second before you get that fuel pressure back. Really annoying problem. The only way I was able to solve it throughout last season was by running pretty much a full tank the whole time, which means 20 plus gallons of fuel in this car, and I was only using a little bit at a time, which is a lot of excess weight for no real reason. So two ways to fix that, right? The obvious way is to get a fuel cell, and trust me, I would love to get a really nice, let's say, I don't know, radium fuel cell. They make some super nice looking stuff that works great. 6 gallon, put it off in the corner here, really get with the weight balance just right. Those are so expensive. I mean, to get the cell, the hat, the pump, everything else that would make it work, we're talking a few $1,000s. And that's just not in the budget right now. And I could do it cheaper, but then you get a fuel cell that's not SFI rated. And if it's not SFI rated, it's not legal in a lot of competitions. And if I'm gonna spend the money and redo the whole fuel system, I might as well do something that will last me all the way up until pro. So to buy myself a little bit of time so that I can save thousands of bucks or something like that, we're gonna cut this thing in half and make my own little fuel cell, which should alleviate all of those problems. And it's not gonna cost me thousands of bucks. Now, if you haven't heard of this before, it does happen. There are a few people that have done it. Some of the BMW guys have cut their gas tanks in half. Their gas tanks are actually plastic, so they can like plastic weld them, whatever. Most of them don't suffer from the fuel starvation issues, but it's a good way to save a bunch of weight because again, you're not carrying around 20 something gallons of fuel. You're only carrying around 8 or 10. But that's enough talking. Let's get this tank out of here. Hopefully I don't have too much gas in it. Step 1 in removing the gas tank. This was just for my convenience. You may not have this convenience, but I removed my entire quarter and the rear wheel. This is so we can get access to the fill neck for the gas tank. Obviously it runs through the passenger wheel well and to the gas tank and to the tank itself. So we'll have to get some of this stuff out so we can actually get the tank out. Removing the actual tank should be pretty simple, especially since we have the whole fuel system disconnected anyways. So let's get under there and start taking some things apart. The plastic shield out of the way that covered up our filler neck. You can see it's only held on the car with this little tab that is a 10 millimeter nut. It's the same tab I use to mount my hydro line, which I might need to have to take a look at that. We'll ignore it for now. Also, the amount of tire in here is crazy. I have not taken these quarter panels off since I put them on actually, but I mean like that is inches deep. That's crazy. All right, we're taking a peek under the car. Don't mind the sway bar here, but step 1, we've got to get the e-brake cables out of the way, and then we can remove this heat shield. With the heat shield out of the way, we can get access to the straps that actually hold this tank up. Might be hard to see right now, but they are tucked behind this, and they go up there. It's just a rubber strap that wraps around it and holds the tank in place. So let's get the cables out, the heat shield out, and then we can start looking at dropping the tank. All right, next part of getting the gas tank out is getting to the bolts that hold those straps up. And for this, it's the easiest part of the whole job actually. So all you're gonna do is just remove your entire rear subframe, and that will give you access to those 2 little bolts that hold the gas tank straps up. Super easy, not time consuming at all. I'm definitely not exhausted, and yeah, this is really fun. Okay, so here it is, subframe is out of the way. And these are the bolts we're after. right here. So you can see this bolt holds this strap up, which is what holds the gas tank up on the car. Now, unfortunately, it's just this one bolt. I thought maybe I'd get lucky and there's a bolt on the other side and you could just undo one, but it's like a swing. So it's bolted here and the other side is just like a little pivoting hinge thing. So unbolt this, get that out of the way, and then we can pull the gas tank out. And we'll have to undo some of these lines here. Now, because I deleted my whole evap canister, you'll see like this line doesn't really go to anything. This one doesn't go to anything. So it'll make my life a little easier because we really just have the big one for the filler neck and then the breather that also goes up to the filler. And I think that's it. So let's get this thing out. Another really important part of this job that I left out is that you want to make sure you have a full tank of gas. I'm talking like all 20 something gallons in there. So when you go to take it out, it's super heavy and really hard to remove. Joking aside, I got the tank out. It was kind of a bear just doing it alone. I had the jack under there, and when I undid the second bolt, it started to fall. And then when I moved the strap, it just came crashing down. And whatever, it worked. It came out. It's not a big deal. I didn't damage anything. Just make sure you disconnect all your lines, all your connectors. Don't forget there is one fuel line you have to get from inside the car, as well as the 2 electrical connectors. I had already done that since we removed all the wires out of this thing. But if you didn't do that already, they would be right in here. So normally you'd have an electrical connector and then that line right there. And then that side is just a small connector. Now I've got this thing perched up. I'm trying to fill up some fuel, or rather drain the tank and fill that up. But there's a lot of gas in there. One of these is definitely not going to be enough. Okay, so we got all the gas drained out of the tank. Now it is super, super, super important that we clean this thing out really good. Any leftover fuel, more importantly fuel vapors, could be really dangerous. We could have a fire if they are still in there. So I'm going to rinse the tank out with water probably 3 or 4 times, and I'm actually going to leave some water in the tank when we do go and cut it. That will really ensure that there's no possible way for fuel vapors to be in there, which could start a really explosive fire, and we don't want that. So it's all drained, got it all open, got a hose out here. I'm just going to rinse it out a few times and we should be good. All right, we got the tank all washed out, left a little bit of water in there, and took an extra safety precaution and actually just stuck a torch in there and lit it just to see if there were any fumes. They would have gone up in flames right away. They didn't, so we should be all clear. Put a mark on the tank. It's time to cut this thing in half. Well, there's no going back now. Okay, before I throw this half of the gas tank away, I want to at least weigh it. Again, it's empty. We can do the math on how much weight I'm saving based off the fuel, but I want to see how much we're saving just off the metal. So let's throw this on the scale. Balance it here. 18.7 pounds, so almost 19 pounds. That means this whole gas tank weighs about 40 pounds stock, and that's bone dry. So we saved almost 20 pounds in metal, plus a few of the lines that I got rid of because there's a factory line for the evap, the breather line, and a few other like hard lines that run the length of the car. Threw all those away. Now we do have to run a new return line that'll be AN, so we're gonna add a half a pound back there. But most importantly, the real weight savings here is going to be actual fuel, liquid, right? So 1 gallon of water, fuel, whatever liquid weighs 8 pounds. The factory tank is 20 gallons. That's 160 pounds of fuel when it's full. Now, because this car had fuel slosh issues all the time, I always kept it full. I mean, I would like overfill it to the point it was spilling out after 2 or maybe 4 laps, just to be on the safe side, because I did not want it to fuel starve, especially in the middle of a competition. So that means my comp weight, I had an extra 160 pounds of fuel. So by cutting that in half, and now I don't have to run it completely full, we're saving 80 pounds plus the 20 of the steel we cut out. And I didn't even get the weight of the strap, and like I said, some of those lines we were able to delete. So confidently, I could say we got rid of 100 pounds. Now, we did get rid of 100 pounds of weight off like the one part that you're not really gonna feel it, right? The factory fuel tank is in a great location as far as center of gravity and really low, but 100 pounds is 100 pounds, and that's a big difference. And because we're not gonna be making crazy power, every little bit of weight savings I can get out of this car, I'm going to. And this is a ton of work. There's no lie about that. Just pulling the subframe, pulling the gas tank, draining it is a lot of work. And we cut it in half. We still have to weld it back together and pray that it doesn't leak. It's a lot of work, but at least I can say with confidence and with real numbers that we are saving a good bit of weight. And like I said, we're fixing a huge issue. So we're not gonna have any fuel starvation anymore. And not only will it make the car run better, but it's gonna give me a lot of peace of mind to know that if the tank isn't completely full, we're still gonna be okay. The last clip you saw of Nate welding the gas tank, we only got a little bit of welding done and ran out of welding gas. So new day, new bottle of gas. Let's get this thing hooked up. And then Omar is actually coming out. You guys should know Omar. He was on the Hot Pit race team all year last year. He's gonna be on the team again this year. Omar is an awesome homie, big part of the team, and he is coming all the way out to help me today because we still have a lot of work to do. So let's get the welder set up, get the tank ready for him to weld. He can knock that out while I am working on some other things. Gas tank is welded. What do we think?
Give her 4 out of 10.
We won't zoom in on those welds.
Don't, please don't. You're horrible.
At the end of the day, this tank is not under any pressure. So yes, it's holding fluid. Yes, it needs to be airtight, fluid tight, whatever. It can't leak, but it's not going to be under a ton of stress. It's not going to be seeing huge amounts of pressure. So as long as it's liquid tight, we will be good. So some of the welds didn't look perfect, but I'm learning, Omar's learning, and that's why I like taking on jobs like this. And now what we're gonna do is fill that thing up with water, see if it leaks, and because it's metal, if it leaks, you just grind it down and weld it again. Moment of truth.
Ooh, it's gonna leak. Oh no!
Test number 2 with the water. Threw some rubberized undercoating on this thing. It looks OEM basically, just missing half. Really happy with that. I think it's time we throw it in the car. We've been working and we got the gas tank back in the car. And while cutting the gas tank in half, welding it back up, fixed the majority of the issues with this car, it is not the only issue we have to fix with the fuel system. And that's because the factory Nissan fuel system is a returnless style, which means fuel pressure is regulated in the tank and it only sends out the amount of fuel the engine needs at the time, which works for a stock setup. When you're swapping in a different motor, especially an LS, it requires a return style fuel system, which means fuel goes to the engine, through the fuel rails, and then out, and then that's where you regulate the fuel pressure in order to keep it constant. Engine's actually in now, it's been a few days, but you see our fuel pressure regulators here. So our feed line will come from the tank to the fuel rail, run through the fuel rail, and then go to our fuel pressure regulator, and then back down to the tank. So there are 2 ways that you fix this problem on a Z. You can either buy an extra fitting that goes in the factory fuel pump hanger thing. It gets kind of confusing because with the saddle tank, there's actually a Venturi setup with a line from one side to the other, and it goes into this weird little fuel pressure regulator thingy, and you tap into that and run an extra line through the stock hat, and that acts as your return. It's kind of confusing. I had a friend that did it and it didn't work out for him. He was getting really inconsistent fuel pressure readings. And then there are other people who have no problems at all with that. For the sake of simplicity and trying to keep this car as basic and reliable as possible, we deleted the whole thing. So this is way more, we'll say old school. This is how you would see it on like an S chassis or something like that. We actually just remade the top hat, fuel pump hanger, all of that, just out of sheet metal, welded some fittings onto it, and now the whole system's in a simple AN system that should have no problems working. All right, so with that little cover popped up, you can see that is just a piece of sheet metal with AN fitting like bungs welded to it. and there's a hanger like this welded to that sheet metal thing that holds the fuel pump in its spot. So we were able to kill two birds with one stone, right? We fixed the fuel slosh issue, and we were able to convert this into a return style fuel system while also adding some reliability by deleting some of the complexity of the factory fuel pump, hanger, and all of that junk. Overall, I'm really happy with how this whole thing turned out. I will say it took us a few passes to get the tank fully sealed up. There was a couple times we had to grind down a few little spots and weld it over 1 or 2 times, and it was some trial and error. If I was a bit more skilled of a welder, maybe I was TIG welding it or something like that, there would probably be less time spent on that. But again, I'm learning. That's why I take on projects like this, so I can learn through them. And at the end of the day, I think this is going to work great. It's going to fix a lot of the problems we had last year. Plus, it's saving us quite a bit of weight, and it saved me a bunch of money. Like I said, a fuel setup from Radium or one of the other high-end brands is so expensive. And I think this is going to work great for now. Drop a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. Would you be down to cut your gas tank in half, or am I crazy? Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And of course, catch you in the next one.